Resistance will start after the consciousness, and it fills the political vacuum, right? And then political vacuum now is going to be felt, and that therefore means a resistance again. And then from the resistance we continue to repression. The government will now introduce a repression because, like we said, now people are conscientized through psychological means which they did not accept and take anything. When the government wants to stop the consciousness movement by even going to the lens of having boosting people, is that. It therefore becomes a thing that it does not stop, because like he had said initially, that it's okay to die for an idea that will live, than to live for an idea that will die. When he died, the idea that he had, or the idea that he led, lived. And it was very difficult to therefore stop that one, because now we told people that, hey, you are their equal, and when they tell you different, just tell them to handle that. Right? So that therefore made it very difficult, such that when repression comes about, we did say the resistance that comes with the consciousness as a philosophy filling that vacuum is going to be 10 times. And then repression will have to be 20 times. So in this instance, the state repression intensifies. And when they intensify repression, it's unlike that of NCPC, SACP. Those were bad. This one will be intensified. When they are intensified, I need you to understand the degree of the repression will not be the same. Now, in this instance, one thing that we are mainly looking at is the very fact that state repression, as it intensifies, and there are no lengths to which the apartheid state will not go to build and defend. There are no lengths to which the apartheid state will not go to build and defend apartheid. What does this mean? It means the government was willing to do anything and everything for as long as they would solidify their existence and their power. Now, when it comes to all of that, it is tied to one thing in particular. The government will therefore go to the very length of a whole lot of people. Why? Because back then, one thing that they would use is force, right? And we did say they were using the police, but now they are now going to introduce the SAADF. If the townships are causing problems, they are not only going to send the security police or the state police, instead they are also going to send the SADF. And when the SADF is there, you need to understand, if you are a policeman, you are the big brother. But if there comes the SADF, you are the young brother, they are the bigger brother. Which means whatever you do and fail, they have to do twice as much as you did. Says what? So when it comes to the force, hence we speak of the very fact that the repression will be intensified. Because when SADF comes into play, you know what on that day. Yeah, now it's going down. It's definitely going down. Hence we are going to speak about such events of 1976. 1976 is one of the reasons that a lot of people say, you know what's happening in South Africa is nothing to do with communists. Because at this point they are killing kids. If you do remember 21 March 1960, what happened then? Sharpeville massacre. In the Sharpeville massacre, 69 people died, and 10 of those people were children. But the reasoning behind all those events, or the very fact that South Africa was still okay in terms of trading with other countries, is because they were hiding behind the fact that we are fighting against communists. Why? Because they were representatives of capitalism. But now when everything pushed, or when push comes to shove, and people start looking at the very fact, but wait, in 1960 you said those people were communists. In many other events that happen in between, the fights that are going to happen in between, people continue to say it's communist. But in 1976, the question now that is being raised is communists in school uniforms. These are kids, bro. So in this instance, it's very difficult to hide that very part from the media, such that South Africa now starts having a spotlight over it. But wait, my guy. What's going on there? That's why we are therefore going to talk about that, which is referred to as the crisis of the apartheid. Because when you speak of the crisis of apartheid, it's because of all these things that the government has done to try and shield themselves and put them, or to still have themselves in power. And in this instance, when they intensify the repression, they'll still use that same claim to say we are fighting against communists. But the question will be, at this point, it's more than that. It's beyond that. And it also goes to the very fact that the government is doing anything and everything in order for them to stay in power, such that they go to the very lengths of hanging people. They did not mind, for as long as it was okay for them to still be solidified in power. They would hang and kill everyone or anyone that stood before them. When we speak of the intensification of the repression, it is also tied to one facet. When it comes to laws, you do remember that when it comes to the police cannot just arrest you and take you to trial, and put you to prison. There is a process. Now they need a warrant of arrest. They come to you, they do this. Back then, they will just pick you up and be like, yeah, my guy, today is your day. And we are going to straight to prison. No trial, nothing. That's when we speak of intensifications of repression. Before that situation, they would also try to have a process and procedure that is somewhat legal. But after the intensification of repression, they would take anyone that stood before them or that stands before them as a matter of fact and do whatever is necessary as means of justice. Are we together? So it therefore continues to therefore give us this example that the apartheid state responded to resistance with increased repression and brutality. Activists were banned, detained, and tortured. Over 100 people were hanged in political executions. Now, when we speak of political executions, it is also tied to repression. With these people are challenging them politically. When we speak of political justice, it makes even politicians to start looking things at a lot clearer eye or from a very clear vision. Now we do so, we continue. And then we have an example here. You do remember the African nationalism at the end of the day becomes an umbrella for everyone, right? Indians, colors, and blacks come together and say, hey, listen, let's set aside our differences. As much as we are different, you are crying for bread, I'm crying for a slice, this one is crying for everything that we do not have. Let us now look at this thing from this very angle. We have one oppressor here. If we fight as a collective, we will be able to win. Now let us look at the three. I say this because of these three different gentlemen, Indian, white, and black. They were all part of the same movement, but they were of different races. Such that someone would ask, why were whites involved? Because some whites were not willing to mainly be the beneficiaries of whatever was happening, and they stood against it. Some were British, who actually said, no, man, we can't have Boers doing this to people. Some were Afrikaners themselves, who were like, okay, no, this is bad. What we are doing is, let alone in the 1980s, in the very fact, from the very consummation of things, some people were like, nah. But now, at this very point in time, we are therefore going to look at this particular individual, that is Ahmed Timon, who was part of the SAIC or the Indian Congress. He was a committed anti-apartheid activist. He plunged 10 stories to his death from a window in John Foster Square in 1971. The security police mocked his fate, saying, Indians can't fly. Someone just died. This person was 10 stories high, which is where he was held.